For 2 days, we have been doing Ayurveda and allopathic view of PCOS, and we saw a great deal of things actually. To understand that, all was very important because we got certain points in allopathy on which treatment has to be done, and we also got some points in Ayurveda on which treatment has to be done. The treatment of both the pathies is very different actually. For treatment in allopathy, actually, you should understand all the allopathic concepts, all the hormones, which levels are increased, which levels are decreased, and then which symptoms manifest. Because the treatment is going to be on that parameters. And to understand Ayurvedic principles, you should understand which are the doshas involved, what is the situation of the Agni, which dhatu is involved, like Med dhatu is involved, then we have to give treatment of the Med dhatu. First, I'm going to do the entire treatment from allopathic view, and in the second half of this session only today itself, we are going to discuss the entire treatment actually according to Ayurveda. So let's start with the first allopathic treatment. So what I'm going to say are the treatment objectives according to the allopathic treatment. So reduction of ovarian volume, right? Because we know in PCOS the ovarian volume is raised. Quantity of menstrual bleeding, regularization of menstrual cycle. This is actually also a symptom, as you all know. So many patients come for these things actually, and hormonal assay. So as you can see over here, I have not included infertility because that is not the ultimate goal of PCOS, right? PCOS patient, it can be married or unmarried. We have to work on these four parameters. So if you say infertility, that is an added thing which the patient wants. It doesn't come in the PCOD criteria. Also hyperandrogen, if the patient is having acne and all, or hirsutism, if the patient is having other things like for example obesity and all, so that doesn't come in our treatment objectives. Definitely patient has to lose weight, but main on the PCOS, these are the four criteria which are found on which we are going to work. So how we are going to do, how are we going to manage PCOS? So the words over here are very important. Here I didn't write treatment of PCOS because in lots of patients actually we have to manage the PCOS. PCOS is actually a lifestyle disease. If you don't improve your lifestyle, then we have to treat the disease for a long period of time. I have a patient actually. She got recently married and she was very regular in her treatment. So in between actually we lost touch. She shifted to somewhere else and then she was not able to come to me and she didn't take any treatment also. So now she is married and she's like my menses are not coming and now I want pregnancy also. Like my menses became regular with your treatment and I just didn't do anything for almost quite a period of time, and now I'm really worried like how am I going to get pregnant. And her age is actually, current age is 33. She married quite late actually. So this is what happens, you know. We are going to manage PCOS by four things actually. So diet, this you have to say to the patient that see, the main thing about the management PCOS, if you want that your PCOS should be managed, then diet is very important. Diet doesn't means dieting, it is following a healthy lifestyle or healthy diet. So what is a healthy diet? Actually I prepared a list of do's and don'ts actually, which we can also use, we can advise to the patients also. Second is exercise. Exercise also important because we have to burn out all those calories. Exercise is when you dedicate your time for exercise, that is different. Lifestyle modification means in 24 hours of your life you should be making modifications in your lifestyle. That is, for example, if you are taking an auto every day, so you have to change, you have to walk wherever possible, take the stairs, run, jump, all these things. I mean lifestyle modifications. If you're cooking, just walk around like that. If you're bending down, don't bend straight, just go down like almost like you're doing a squat. So that is lifestyle modification, to actually modify your lifestyle and not do as a compulsion. That is the most important thing. If you do 1 2 3 rolls properly, then only medicines will work. And you know there's a shlok of Pathya in Ayurveda, so that also I'll cover in the Ayurvedic session only. So now moving forward, we are going to go into the actual management. Here I'm discussing the medical management because all three we would be discussing further also in the Ayurvedic session also. So most of the patients will come for regularization of menses, those who come for management of infertility. Some will come for specific treatment like hyperandrogenism manifestations, and some will come for management of insulin resistance and hyperinsulinemia. So we are going to see actually each one in proper details. So let's start with the regularization of menses. That this is the most common management, and you should know this management because even married and unmarried patients both can come to you because of these symptoms. In married patients, actually, you have to ask one question: do you want fertility or you don't want fertility? If the patient says that yes, I want fertility, I want conception, and I want to take the treatment now itself, if I conceive in this year or in this 6 months also, it's okay for me. So at such times you're not going to start with the treatment of regularization of menses. Actually, at such times what you are going to do, you are going to treat the patient for fertility, because in allopathy the treatment for regularization of menses is actually ossipills, and ossipills, as you all know, these are oral contraceptive pills. So if the patient is given ossipills, the patient won't be able to conceive. So this is very important actually. If the patient is unmarried, there is no question of fertility, and if the unmarried patient asks you that I want to regularize the menses, then you can aram se give ossipills. So if the fertility is not desired, I said start ossipills. So what does ossipills do? Okay, ossipills contains estrogen and progesterone. There is also pills which are known as POP, that is progesterone only pills. You can give that also. You can give this also. Anyone you can give. Okay, it induces regular cycles. Now, how ossipills can induce regular cycles? What happens? It contains estrogen, right? And it contains progesterone also. Progesterone is very much decreased in PCOS, right? So because we give estrogen and progesterone, as a result of which it sends a feedback to the hypothalamus and not secrete GnRH at that frequent frequencies which is required for LH, and therefore the GnRH feels that now the follicular phase should start. That signal goes because estrogen and progesterone sends that signal, because progesterone is there, as a result of which LH secretion doesn't occur, and so FSH secretion occur, and so the regularization cycle. Now imagine if the cycle starts to get regularized, that is FSH is secreted, FSH will lead to the follicle formation, that is FSH will lead to the Graafian follicle formation. There would be ovulation. FSH is there, so estrogen would be in that quantity, and it will cause LH release, and it will cause ovulation, and then LH will cause the corpus luteum to secrete progesterone. So this thing doesn't happen like only 1 month you take and this will happen properly. No, it takes some time for menses to get regularized even after ossipills. One more thing which this does actually, because this contains progesterone, this ossipills actually causes a state of static endometrial hypoplasia, and this is the reason why conception doesn't occur, or why it is contraception actually. It also interferes with the characteristics of cervical mucus. Cervical mucus becomes progesterone like, actually it becomes thick, it prevents the penetration of sperm, and also interferes with the tubal motility, and it alters tubal transport also. So this is how it acts on contraception measures. Now side effects are very important. Why I am giving you the side effects is because most of the patients will come to you who are actually taking ossipills and they'll be fed up of it, because ossipills you can't give for a long period of time. So before mentioning the side effects, I would like to mention how we are going to give the ossipills. So ossipills, from the day one, the patient is going to take for 21 days actually. Like every day she is going to take the pill. After 21 days, that is the pill packet is over, then you'll ask the patient to wait for menses. So menses will come. Some patients it comes in 2 to 3 days, some patients in 4 to 5 days, some patients in 7 to 8 days. So that will depend from patient to patient. And once that cycle is established, like patient will come to know that my menses come in 3 days. So mostly it remains like that. And whenever the menses come, for example, if it comes in 3 days, then when the menses come, from the day one again start the ossipills. So like that we give actually contraception, and such contraception the patient is wanting for 6 months, you can give for 6 months. Patient wanting for 3 months, you can give for 3 months. This is how we schedule the giving of ossipills actually. So what are the side effects? As I said, nausea and vomiting is very common. Like if you give the patient a pill in first 1 week or 1.5 weeks, the patient can develop nausea, vomiting, and tell you also, okay, I don't want to continue the pill. But you should counsel the patient that this is like the side effect. If you are so keen on giving those pills, then actually allopathic people counsel and they say that this is a side effect. Even headache and leg cramps can occur. Leg cramps are not that severe, as I've seen a little bit crampiness sensation is there. At times patient don't even understand that it is because of the pill. Mastalgia is a side effect which occurs in patients. I've seen it. Many people think that it is okay to give ocipils in thin patients for some period of time. So, but the patients who are very obese actually, this is not a contraindication of ocipils that if the patient is obese, don't give. But that is what we see in practice because they'll gain more weight actually. Acne and chloasma. Chloasma is the blacking or hyperpigmentation of the face. Acne also a complication of occipit, also a symptom of PCOS. So you can see actually we are just regularizing the menses, but other symptoms are increasing, right? As you can see. But here menses is also not proper. At times the patient will have breakthrough bleeding. Patient will take occipils for 6 months or something, and once she'll come in your OPD, doctor, it's bleeding from night, it is bleeding, and you're like, oh my goodness. Because whenever there are hormonal disturbances, because underlying hormonal disturbances there, as you all know, we are not treating the PCOS, we are just correcting it, or for the time being we are correcting it, you can say. So hormonal disturbances are there, so all these side effects can be seen in one patient also. So that is actually the beauty. Loss of libido occurs. Loss of libido occurs because this is a contraceptive pill, because it actually causes the dryness of vagina. Also many patients experience white discharge also. So actually I've seen patients who are very happy on ocipils, like they are on ocipils from 5 years and all, and they are very happy. And these are the people actually who are like from a very affluent background, and they think that this is okay. But some people get adjusted to it. I mean, some people don't even get any side effects, and if they do their exercise and everything proper, then they get adjusted to it. But these, what I mentioned over here, this is actually the mild side effects. And why I kept nausea, vomiting, and headache up, because those are the maximum side effects, that is, those are seen in maximum patients. So even if the patient says that I'm very happy and everything, even if the patient feels actually after you take the occipils for a considerable period of time, because these are all the hormones, right? So it is causing depression, hypertension. So imagine PCOS causing hypertension, occipils also causing hypertension. Occipits is actually contraindicated in patients who are having severe cardiovascular disease, or those who are having severe migraine, or who are having severe liver diseases. So that is actually absolute contraindications of taking occipils. So continuous, if you take occipils, then you can also have cancer. So that is also there actually. Even though we are not that quick in the treatment, but still at least we don't worsen the disease, we don't cause more weight gain, we don't cause more acne, and we don't cause it more difficult to treat. That is what I want to say. So let's go ahead. And also we have vascular complications. Vascular complications are, you can have arterial thrombosis, venous thrombosis, DVT and all. Those are the vascular complications. So all major complications actually. So this is occipils. I'll recommend, if you want to treat the patient for a short period of time, the patient is wanting contraception for a short period of time. Patient is saying for 6 months I don't want pregnancy, and then if I get, it's okay. Like that, if the patient is saying the first short period of time you can use occipils, and then afterwards then you can give the treatment. But for a long period of time, it's not at all indicated. So treating infertility. So I've written clomiphene citrate. You all would be knowing that this is an ovulation induction drug actually, which is not used that much nowadays, but it used to be used previously a lot. Almost 10 years from now, it used to be used by everyone. Now it is mostly replaced by another drug which is known as letrozole. But still, we should know what is clomiphene citrate, because why letrozole is used, that also you should know, because of there is some side effects of clomiphene, as a result of which you are using letrozole. It is actually an anti-estrogenic, but it also weakly estrogenic. So you'll say what this is. actually what happens now, it binds to the estrogen receptors which are present in the pituitary and hypothalamus. So in the pituitary and hypothalamus, it will actually bind to the estrogen receptors, and estrogen would not be able to bind, as a result of which estrogen, when it is not able to bind, so it will not able to exert its function on the GnRH, like the feedback which we give, estrogen causes more or less secretion only, so that won't occur. And actually the hypothalamus and the pituitary would be blinded actually to the true circulating estrogen, and as a result of which what will happen, they will think that estrogen is not that much, as a result of which FSH would be secreted. So this is the mechanism. The dose is actually 50 mg from day 2 to day 5 is given, that is there are certain side effects also, that also I'll discuss. Actually protocol is that you have to give from day 2 to day 5 you can give, or day 6 you can give, and you do sonography, that is follicular study, from the 9th day, and then depending when you have a mature follicle you can trigger it with HCG actually. So that is actually the general protocol. Multiple pregnancy is one of the side effects, because at one time lots of follicles start developing actually, and as a result of which the patient can have multiple pregnancy, which is a big side effect actually. And ectopic pregnancy is also a big side effect which we don't want actually. So all these side effects occur actually. And visual disturbances, hot flushes. Hot flushes, if you see, this is actually a symptom which is found in premenopausal or during the menopausal period. So why clomiphene causes hot flushes is because it binds to the receptors, as a result of which estrogen is not able to exert its function. So when there is hypoestrogenism, at that time actually hot flushes occur. So also other things occur. What are the other things is that the vagina will become very dry actually, because moisture in the vagina is a function of estrogen, as a result of which these patients also experience a loss of libido. There are some changes which takes on the endometrium also. The estrogen causes proliferation of the endometrium, and clomiphene will actually cause thinning of the endometrium. Why this drug was replaced and why this was not continued is that we used to see in patients, some patients they would ovulate and they would cause pregnancy and all, but in some patients they will develop complications like multiple pregnancy or ectopic pregnancy and all. And in some patients, however, how much ever clomiphene you give, you increase the dose, you do this protocol, that regime, etc., but still results were not occurring, because it causes these effects, that is, it decreases the moisture in the vagina, it changes the cervical mucus, and it also has the effect on the endometrium. Newer drugs are available now, and this drug letrozole is actually an aromatase inhibitor. What is aromatase? I explained to you that aromatase is an enzyme which is important for the conversion of testosterone to estrogen, right? So this is an aromatase inhibitor. So what it will cause? It will cause decrease in the estrogen level. The hyperestrogen level will actually decrease, and as a result of which we can reverse the feedback, that if the estrogen is not there, then again the same action as clomiphene, but the mechanism is different. So all the drugs which are given, actually the main action is to somehow decrease the estrogen, or somehow decrease the hypothalamus to perceive the estrogen, and somehow to regulate the feedbacks. So why it is popular and why people are using it nowadays is because it has no peripheral anti-estrogenic effect, that is, it has no effects on the endometrium or the cervical mucus, as a result of which people are using it. The dose you can give 2.5 mg OD or BD, or you can even give 5 mg OD or BD. It is same actually, from day 2 to day 3 you can start, you can give for 5 days, then you can do the follicular study on the day 9. Okay, so this I told you actually. So this is letrozole actually, which is most commonly used nowadays. So this you can use for ovulation induction.